Okay. So I'm going to talk to you today about caffeine and does it stimulate hair growth in vitro and in vivo. So I'm going to share with you some of the studies behind caffeine, and I have no conflicts of interest. So as an introduction, I'm just going to talk a little bit about caffeine, its properties, and its effects. Now, a lot of what I'm going to talk to you today about, I've referenced from a very good review article that was given to me by Jill Westgate. So if anyone of you want to review any of the information I'm talking about, there's the reference from Jill's paper. So as we know, we get caffeine in coffee, tea, cocoa. Cola nuts is something that I didn't know anything much about. And they are nuts that grow on a tree, and they look like that. And you can actually buy the raw nuts, but I wouldn't advise anyone to do so because they're apparently very bitter. And Coca-Cola actually got its name from this plant. So if we look at some of the biochemical properties, this is the caffeine molecule, and we know that it's a phytochemical, and meaning that it comes from a plant source. Oral absorption of caffeine peaks at 45 minutes. So I'm hoping that some of you had a coffee before we started, because you'll be at full attention maybe by now. The half-life is 4 to 7 hours, and the toxic dose is 10 milligrams, which doesn't sound a lot, but it's actually equivalent to somewhere between 50 and 100 cups of coffee. Pure powdered caffeine exists, but it's toxic with 1 tablespoon, and people used to use it to put into drinks to kind of hype themselves up, and they ended up dying. It's metabolized 97% in the liver into active metabolites that you see there. Paraxanthine, which increases lipolysis, theobromine, which dilates blood vessels, and theophylline, which acts on smooth muscles. The other 3% is excreted in the urine, unchanged. Now, as you can see, the chemical structure here, that is obviously not the 3D structure, but the 3D structure is similar to adenosine. And this actually is how it partly works, is because it can block adenosine receptors. And this leads to an increase in neurotransmitter acetylcholine. So if we look at that, so there are 2 types of receptors, A1A and A1 receptors, sorry, A2A and A1 receptors for adenosine, and caffeine can block both of those receptors. So carrying on, the most well-known mechanism of action of caffeine is that it increases cyclic AMP through non-selective inhibition of phosphodiesterase. And this leads to a decrease in microinflammation, an increase in cell proliferation, and these things are relevant to hair growth and modulation. It's also a known antioxidant, and it has been postulated by researchers that it's also a 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, and I'll talk about that in one of the studies to follow. So again, here's some of the references, but these references you can find also in Jill Westgate's paper. So if we look at this nice complicated diagram, which actually is a simplified diagram, you can see that the